You ever play a game and think to yourself that you're not really exploring the world, you're more so walking through a script, like you're not really discovering, but instead being escorted? Like you're at Disneyland instead of a world that is meant to be explored at your own pace. I often find the existence of most open world games to be kind of tiring these days. Don't get me wrong, open world games can be fun. The Witcher 3, Skyrim, and games with open-ended zones like, say, Xenoblade Chronicles. Those all rank among my favorites in the genre. But for the most part, open world games usually feel formulaic, like there's nothing to discover anymore but just things dotted on a map that are meant to waste your time. But there seems to be one game that looks to be the saving grace beyond all of this, a game that actually seems like it's harkening back to the actual strengths of what open world games are meant to be, and that game is Crimson Desert. And in an industry where we're told that games are too expensive, we shouldn't expect too much for the money that we spend, every now and then something releases that proves, actually, you're not crazy. It's the industry that is actually gaslighting you. And honestly, Crimson Desert looks to be having the AAA scene looking kind of nervous for a good reason, because it actually looks, well, amazing. One of the things I found out about Crimson Desert during all the preview coverage all over the internet is that you don't level up like you do in other games. Sure, yes, okay, you do still level up, but not by beating a goblin or anything like that. Crimson Desert instead rewards you with your level ups by doing what should be the core meaningful reason for why you're playing a game like that in the first place. You see, in Crimson Desert, you level up by exploring stuff, right? By finding things, discovering monuments, going over that hill or mountain to see what's on the other side. The very act of what is the core design philosophy of what a game like this should be about is not only the chase, but also its reward. It's a brilliant idea. A simple one, I know, probably not the first one to do it either, but a good one still. Instead of getting 5 experience for fighting a wolf or something, you level up instead because you made that journey to that fabled structure in the middle of this dangerous world. That's actually really cool. Sort of reminds me of Dark Souls in a sense too, but kind of in reverse. Dark Souls didn't hold your hand, didn't flood you with Ubisoft level UI design. Dark Souls didn't beg you to follow a breadcrumb trail of slop. Games like Dark Souls, and now Crimson Desert as well, are doing the same thing that made me fall in love with gaming all over again. The art of walking into the unknown. You get lost somewhere, you took a wrong turn, you got into a fight you barely made it out of. You suffered, but because of what you went through, you discovered something new. I know maybe comparing Dark Souls to Crimson Desert feels weird to some, like how can you compare a game the size of a city to a game that's the size of like a country, but like anything in life, stuff tends to have similarities. The art of figuring it out can do a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to video games, and I honestly kind of love that. The world is hostile, you're equipped for the dangers, sure, now just go out there and explore it. I also get heavy Witcher vibes from Crimson Desert as well, especially in the character designs and the facial animations and how the overall world looks. It has this very clearly European design in its world that is unmistakable, even though the game is made in South Korea. The main character, for example, whose name is Cliff McDuff, yes, that's his real name, I'm not kidding, and I love that that's actually his name, is voiced by Alec Newman. He has a Scottish accent and is seen here from Game Rant. They did a who's who in Crimson Desert before the game's release. Cliff's voice actor has also played Atom Smasher in Cyberpunk 2077, characters in Dragon Age, Vanguard, and Xenoblade Chronicles, and various characters in games like Final Fantasy XIV and Star Wars The Old Republic. As seen here, this is the main voice cast. I'll be honest, I don't recognize many of the faces or voices at first glance, but for example, Damian, the female playable character, however you say her name, is voiced by Rebecca Hansen. She played Eve in Stellar Blade, Olivia in Dying Light, Queen Maeve in the Witcher TV series, and much more as well. The other playable character is Onga, I think that's how you say it, the big orc-looking guy. He's voiced by Stuart Scudamore. He played Claus in Liza P. Overture, Calgar in Space Marine 2, and Blackthorn in Final Fantasy 16. There's another character also that's voiced by Alistair Parker, the guy who played the awesome Blackwall in Dragon Age Inquisition as well. It's a well-rounded cast. Apparently, Crimson Desert's voice work took a really long time to do. Cliff McDuff alone had the voice lines of his character completed over the span of 5 whole years. The cool thing about Crimson Desert is the fact that it's a single-player game, and it's actually to its strength because the absolute state of the gaming industry right now proves that subscription models and live service are about as safe as playing with a nuke these days. If you ask me, generally speaking, the subscription model idea is more so a trap that is turning high-quality games into endless slop instead. Epleon, that's a group that analyzes games data and more, dropped an over 100-page report on the state of video games today, and how so much is going wrong in it. They also detailed, for example, as seen here in this very wordy slide of their report, how so many games have got cancelled already. God of War live service titles, Amazon games closing MMOs down, the new Titanfall game getting axed, Sony's live service games just keep failing and dying before they even come out. Yeah, it's a mess of a slide, I know, but it conveys the state of games very well actually despite that. The point is that what's equally destroying games and not allowing them to flourish is equal parts activism nonsense, that's true, but it's also that the corporate greed of the few are cannibalizing the artistic integrity of what makes games special in favor of these subscription services that then force developers to prioritize engagement metrics over, finished high-quality products from day one. So what we are witnessing, dear viewer, is the death of the definitive gaming experience. What once made you believe that in these worlds is instead replaced by endless shallow content loops that are just designed to keep the numbers up, but not your hopes, unfortunately. The terror is the realization that these platforms and publishers are turning these once prestige studios into mindless factories that are just being forced to produce digital slop instead of what you really want. This is why Crimson Desert is, an anomaly. By definition, what it is doing right now might have been seen at home in 2014 or 15. But when the always online forever games became popular in the new meta, integrity, like always, was the first thing out the window. Since then, we've seen studios once storied being forced to make things that just made no sense in the first place. BioWare forced to make Anthem of all things, Rocksteady told to do Kill the Justice League, even Square Enix, who just keeps trying to make mobile game after mobile game work. It's a waste of resources, time, and energy if there ever was something to do with it, and then Crimson Desert was also actually at one point one of those games too. It was by definition at first an always online shallow content loop to keep the spreadsheets looking good kind of game. It was an MMO after all. Then Pearl Abyss, who made the game obviously, pivoted despite being known as an MMO studio. They did Black Desert obviously before this, if you don't know, and they also saw the writing on the wall. The bubble is going to burst. These sorts of games are dying. Not necessarily because they're bad, but because there's just too many of them, a saturated market of games that nobody can reasonably play more than one of any given time. It's why, like always, 9 out of 10 of times they always fail, but if they succeed, then the riches are bountiful, I guess. So you see, the whole live service thing is like a bunch of bandits from around the world just coming to chase the treasure of El Dorado or something. By the end of the adventure, everyone is pretty much dead. The treasure wasn't real after all, and it was all just a waste of time. Crimson Desert is now a single-player game. There's no live service elements, yet anyways. The game, in case you don't know, can be fully played by just you in your room by yourself at your own leisure. There's no time content, there's no battle pass, nothing. You see, you used to have games made by teams that specialized in different sort of experiences. These days, your favorite game studios aren't really making art anymore. Some of them are, but not a lot of them. They're instead building these digital hamster wheels instead. Like the subscription model promised us unlimited variety, but what we got was anything but that, really. So what happens when corporate greed replaces artistic integrity? Well, it leads to major publishers no longer being incentivized to then ship finished masterpieces, but instead to just keep your engagement metrics high at any cost to them. You've likely played a game where they launched the thing broken with promises that the fixes will come. Despite this, you paid full price for a game that does not work as intended. We've all done this before. For example, High on Life 2 came out recently. It doesn't look very good, but what baffled me about High on Life 2 was the roadmap that the developers behind the game released. Usually, a roadmap is exciting new content to come, right? New missions, a new playable character, maybe an event or something. Instead, look at High on Life's support roadmap for 2026 on screen here. March's content drop is patches to make the game run better, to fix, as they call, soft locks in the game and optimize its performance. In April, you can look further to optimization and more general bug fixes. I'm sorry, but how is this a roadmap exactly? This just sounds like you shouldn't even bother buying or playing that game until after April this year, because objectively the fact the studio there unironically made a roadmap for fixes to soft locks so you knew the game wasn't finished is still crazy to me. But this is what games are these days. It just comes off as stupid and really tone deaf. Nowadays, games are stuck in the era of the engagement trap, if you will, where these legendary studios are being turned into these factory lines for mediocre, never-ending live service games instead. Or studios are releasing content roadmaps that tease fixes to the game that should be there day one. Like, what are we doing? As Epleon reported here, layoffs in games are reaching an all-time high, the vast majority of them from studios making live service games as well, to no one's surprise. I think with Crimson Desert, we're about to see the first Monster Hunter Wilds level success of the year when it drops. Don't get me wrong, Resident Evil 9 will do numbers, and Marathon will also do really great at first too, but Crimson Desert is scratching that itch that honestly, not a lot of games can these days. They're trying to become the next Witcher 3, and realistically, we haven't had a Witcher 3 since, well, Witcher 3 pretty much. Yeah, I know, we've had other open world games come out in the past 10 years before, but nothing has quite been like The Witcher 3. Some of these open world adventures, like every Ubisoft game ever made, are actually just, let's be real, cinematic hallways no matter how big they are. As much as the rise of the live service has pretty much ruined the industry objectively speaking, the death of the single player game, of the open world ones even, is just as concerning to me. We are now trading the raw thrill of organic discovery for instead bloated hand-holding games that are treating players like they're toddlers. It annoys me because if every mountain peak is just a checkbox on a corporate list for us to complete, it sometimes makes you wonder if the soul of gaming already died to these types of games long ago. What I love and have hope for Crimson Desert is not even necessarily that it ends up being a masterpiece or not. What I want the game to be is a reminder that we are missing games that give us true discovery and player agency again. That can be in smaller, tightly knit narratives or even these bigger, sprawling worlds, but either way, the shift away from games that allowed you to breathe them in is concerning to me, to say the least. I hope that Crimson Desert explodes in players and money, if for not any other reason than to pivot the industry back more to single-player games again. Like I said, in Crimson Desert, you level up by exploring. That brings back a nostalgic feel to why you play games like this in the first place. Remember seeing like a distant tower in one of these games? Like it was meant to be a mystery to solve at first and not really just a waypoint to clear off your map like it is these days usually? Yes, sure, modern narratives are strangling player agency and they are replacing the joy of the unknown with predictable and honestly curated corridors that don't feel dynamic, I know. We've become trapped in an industry that is utterly obsessed with forced storytelling that often turns exploration honestly into a mindless and repetitive chore most of the time. I brought this up in my previous video on Resident Evil, but how many times can you recite like 10 side quests from an open world game you just played in the past? How many genuine quests or even levels can you remember after 100 4-night sessions or any other live service game you play? Oftentimes these all blend together because it's not meaningful content, but you likely remember the halls of Raccoon City's police department, the twisting ways of Undead Burg in Dark Souls, or the various routes in, say, Pokemon Red or Blue. Like, if I tell you to imagine the bridge that's north of Cerulean City in Pokemon Red, and then imagine the route to Bill's lab, you can probably do that. But then if I tell you to remember the level design of Highguard, you're gonna come up blank. It's because the golden age of exploration that we yearn for in video games is being suffocated by the very mechanics and elements that are meant to enhance it. By prioritizing checklists and hamster wheeling of your playtime over genuine player freedom, developers are instead effectively killing the magic of the journey without even realizing it as they do it. There genuinely needs to be a talk about why modern gaming narratives are turning our favorite hobby into a predictable script that is honestly ruining it more often than not. Crimson Desert will have a story, characters to talk to obviously, and get the quests from as well, entire factions to get to know too, multiple playable characters, and a massive map that is split into 5 distinct regions. It's kind of everything I want from a game like this. Never mind the fact that you can ride a dragon or a mech, just the act of exploring is going to be enough to draw me in from the get-go. The act of being dropped into this world and told to figure it out, it's like when you first stepped into like Limgrave in Elden Ring. An entire world to explore, but you're kind of just overwhelmed the moment you see everything, because I mean, where do you start? But it's that sense of wonder, right? Like when you first left the vault in Fallout or escaped Alduin and the burning village in the beginning of Skyrim, these moments you remember because they mattered. That's very clearly what Crimson Desert is aiming for as well, and honestly, I think that's kind of amazing to see. The modern day AAA formula is pretty simple. It's overscripted dialogue all the time, constant radio chatter, NPCs narrating your every move because they're afraid to let you go, and then it just turns exploration honestly into busy work. It's more like a guided tour or like a museum exhibit, but you're not really meant to touch anything. Why does this happen, you may be asking? It's pretty simple. Modern AAA development is, as if you don't know, very risk averse. When your budget is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, predictable moves is what often happens. It's why many franchises then feel samey. They can't change how they do anything because if they do, the suits at the top that fund everything will get really scared. This is why player agency then becomes predictable and exploration even becomes formulaic, and then safe design kills the magic pretty much. The thing with Crimson Desert is, one, look at its gameplay, and there's probably one word that I would use to describe any cutscene or gameplay clip or whatever else in it. And that word is chaos, because look at it, it's insane. There's unscripted physics like Breath of the Wild, environmental interactions, wild combat experimentation, like what do you mean I can perform wrestling moves on goblins? I can throw people off high points, and the orc guy you can play as has a cannon for an arm. I think the reason why Crimson Desert is resonating the way that it is, why people want it so bad, is because that game doesn't feel like a guided tour, like say Horizon, or any Ubisoft game ever made. It instead feels dangerous and weird, and if we learned anything from Elden Ring, danger is what actually creates discovery. It's because things can go wrong at any moment, that you can actively want to then seek out more. Now, if Crimson Desert ends up committing itself to having a more open-ended design by letting you as the player experiment, and this is key, fail at the game on your own terms, then the game becomes something the industry has slowly abandoned over the past few years. It no longer feels like a game, but instead it becomes an adventure, and that is why I think so many people are honestly excited about it. When you look at what people actually praise in games, it's things that tie into that design philosophy. Like when we all freaked out when you discovered that, oh wait, there's an underground map in Elden Ring, and you just found that on your own. Or how people figured out how to break games like Baldur's Gate 3 with insane builds. You celebrate and love these sorts of moments because they're not scripted, they kind of just happen. Meanwhile, when it comes to heavily scripted Ubisoft Horizon-like experiences, you just walk here, press the button, trigger the cutscene, nobody remembers anything about it, and it ends up getting forgotten. Because they weren't really games meant to be explored, they were meant to be consumed, and that kills the experience. The thing about exploration is that it's not really a feature in a game, it's instead just something you can do if you want to. It's more like, I guess, a philosophy than a game mechanic. It's the developer saying we trust you to do what you want in this world. But when you place the chaotic synergy of what Crimson Desert is going for against the more modern hold my hand kind of games, even in an open world sense, by the way, it doesn't feel like the devs trust you and that you feel that when you play the game too. While there might not actually be one around your neck, you can kind of feel that leash tugging every time you want to go off the beaten path. But the game goes, sorry, you can't do that yet, or sorry, we got to do this mission first. And if gaming then becomes nothing but a curated emotional roller coaster that you're meant to sit down, shut up, and watch, I'm looking at you, God of War Ragnarok, you end up kind of losing what made the things that people love unique in the first place. Interactivity, agency, discovery. That is Zelda, that is Elden Ring, that is Skyrim, and The Witcher 3. With Crimson Desert, the game is sitting at a theoretical crossroad right now. It can either become another cinematic checklist like a Yote or Horizon, or it can lead into its systems confidently and then allow for unpredictable player-driven chaos, like say Zelda or Elden Ring. If Crimson Desert decides to choose the Elden Ring path, the game will be remembered. If it chooses to follow the curated Sony slot viewpoint, nobody will remember the game in a week. Honestly, what the industry needs right now is games like the Resident Evils, the Crimson Desert, stuff like Octopath Traveler 0, even Elden Ring. What games need more of, and I know this sounds weird to say, but I think games need more worlds that don't care about you. Worlds that don't need to explain themselves. Worlds where you actually feel lost when you enter that forest, go over that ravine, and stumble into something you were clearly not meant to reach yet. But however, from what I've seen of Crimson Desert, that at least so far seems to be what Pearl Abyss is doing here. Because that is where the real joy lives, that if we lose that feeling, we lose the things we play for, and that kind of sucks. As Epleon shows here, over the past few years, a lot of stuff has been axed, shelved, and ruined, but largely speaking, the games that canceled or got one not else were of that curated format, the safe way of doing things. Ironically, as publishers cancel and close down studios making the next live service shooter for the millionth time, the games that actually take risks end up reaping all the rewards. Now, it's not always going to work out that way, I get that. But I would rather play a weird game that takes risks over Horizon 3. This time there's robot humans instead of just dinosaurs or something else. Again, Epleon proves my point, because look here, in 2025, the industry hit a net revenue 7-year low, with growth being far smaller than previous years. And as it shows there on the left, the further you get into years, not only did they make less, they also spend more too. Then Epleon shows this here as well. If you want real growth, the place you need to win over is actually China over anything else these days. Something like Crimson Desert is definitely going to do well in China, the same way Stellar Blade and Black Myth Wukong have as well. All games made by Asian studios with little to no DI whatsoever, meant to be pure gameplay experiences first. The Western mindset can't really grow at that rate they want to because they're held down by so much red tape these days. Make the women uglier, no curves on the body, make it genderless even, add the battle pass, yet the biggest sellers are games that kinda go against all of that. And one look at Crimson Desert's cast, especially Cliff, the main guy, and Damien, however you say your name, the main girl I mean, they're the epitome of what the West doesn't want to make anymore. Attractive male and female characters that aren't checking some stupid list. Also, they're white people, which is kind of a big uh-oh depending on who you ask as well, but either way, Pearl Abyss knows they have to make a game for players. And if they don't, they're cooked, as Epleon then shows here as well. A vast majority of revenue is coming, unsurprisingly, from places like China over anywhere else. The red signifies where Chinese players are spending their money, while the black is what Chinese players spend to buy or play games made outside of Asian countries. Pearl Abyss is South Korean. It's going to do well. That society over there is not confused by the stupidity that often grips Western countries. People actually know what they are. There's no nonsense like in the West. And again, if the majority of spending is on Asian-made games, live service or single player, you would be a moron to ignore that sort of market. The point of this is that Crimson Desert is like a uniquely created bomb that perfectly slots itself into the right camps. It's Asian-made, looks to have zero DEI whatsoever in it, it's single player, allows for dangerous, actual chaotic exploration, and it's not nickel and diming you 24/7. Kinda sounds like a match made in heaven, unless you're a Western publisher looking to force behaviors, that is. Finally, as seen here on this graph again from Epleon, the Chinese publishers that includes a lot of games like Arc Raiders and more have captured 50% of global player spending growth since 2019, and that's not going to slow down. So ultimately, if you want your game to do well, be a Black Myth Wukong, a Stellar Blade, a Crimson Desert, a Resident Evil, anything but what the West tends to make these days. Not to say the West can't make bangers still, but what used to be the norm when the West dominated in the early 2000s to the mid-2010s has fallen off a cliff in comparison now, and that is not by mistake. So the question isn't whether modern narratives are impressive anymore. They are. The question now is, are they slowly strangling the very thing that made games magical? And maybe that's why the West has lost their dominance. And will Crimson Desert break that pattern, or will it become another beautiful cage instead? Time will tell, but either way, I think we're about to see a massive success story drop down, and a lot of publishers are going to start looking really stupid knowing that they just greenlighted 20 live service hero shooters when all they had to do in the first place was make some cool single player games instead. But what do you think? Let me know, subscribe if you want to, and see you guys next time.